Kammerwert. We'll hear from her, and then two more stakeholders, Mrs. Caroline van der Velde of Cable Europe and a representative from Shore Europe. And then I will call upon the member states to react at the end of the workshop. And then we will be hearing from our animator, and who will also be able to relaunch the debate after that. You have the floor, colleagues.
Ja, vielen Dank, Katrin.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Trautmann, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I think has become very clear this afternoon from the whole of the debate, and that is that the frequency band is going to become longer and broader, wider. But if we're talking about the dividend, I think that is a bit of a euphemism, because ultimately the idea is to reallocate an already scarce resource. And I think it is important to stress this. Any kind of frequency policy that the European Union sets up is obviously going to have to take into account the telecoms package, and I don't think we can relinquish any of the principles that we managed to push through in that telecoms package in our tough fight with Council. And obviously the principles we're talking about are ensuring that the resource we have should obviously take into account the cultural and social heritage, media diversity, linguistic diversity, and obviously bear in mind neutrality, take account of the demands on the part of a society, and respect the various rights of those involved, words to that effect. And obviously I think this is an important point that we've made, that is the administration and management of frequencies obviously has to remain in the hands of the member states. And thinking of what our colleague from Piemonte has said, or what we've heard from the Finnish and Swedish representatives, their comments show very clearly that the situation in the individual member states are so different from one to another that we're going to have to be extremely careful, that we don't have a one solution fits all type of solution, because obviously that's not going to take account of these differences between the member states. And I think we have to realize, of course, that there are still very many problems that have to be solved when we're discussing the digital dividend. Frequency interference is one area of problems. Nobody really knows how to tackle this problem. And then just to hope or shove the responsibility on those who are manufacturing the equipment and get them to solve the problem, that is not the right kind of solution. And Ivo Bellet has made it quite clear that it's the polluter pays principle, if you will. Anybody who creates the interference should try and solve the problem. And I think that's a principle that has to underpin our frequency policy in the future. Another issue, another point that has been addressed by some of the speakers, if you take a look at the kind of technology we have in the area of our various frequencies, this has cost a lot of money. The broadcasters, both private and public broadcasters, have made this a point. They've invested a lot of money to be able to set all of this up and render it usable. And if this has to be released now so that we have these this freeing up of frequencies, we've heard what the Commission intends to do. Now, if anybody is supposed to be releasing anything anywhere, then obviously, well, what about the costs of technological renewal and new technological developments? We have to know who is going to be foot the bill for that. And I think it's the obviously whoever is going to be responsible for that. Once again, it's the same principle that applies. And there are certain things that we have to realize. Broadcasting, whether we're talking about private or public, is going to continue to need terrestrial frequencies for a long time. If we want to preserve our cultural and media heritage in Europe, then together with our digital dividend and together with our frequency policy in the European Union, we are going to have to guarantee that these frequencies are still made available to the public and private broadcasting companies. We can't have a situation where we're talking about cultural diversity, but actually relinquish some of this cultural diversity for whatever reason. And I think there are a number of problems, as I've indicated, and they do require a solution that will guarantee that new broadband use has to be combined as optimally as possible with existing users so that we can actually get a true benefit from the digital dividend. We obviously have to bear in mind the various interests that are involved, and I think we have to be quite ambitious and try and develop hybrid solutions. This again is something that Mr. Bellet referred to. And we do have to provide across the board access, high quality broadcasting and broadband services, and we have to take account of the demands of our consumers for high technology services. I don't think we should rush this particular problem because it's too important for the future of Europe. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, cher.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. I'd now like to turn to Mrs. Caroline van Veerten from Cable Europe.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Trautmann. In communications, I think we heard today, spectrum is the basis of everything. It has quickly become a precious resource for Europe, and you cannot talk about wireless or fixed networks without considering that they are connected thanks to signals being transmitted on precious bandwidth. What would Google be without networks to search across? Or a BBC newsroom without TV signals? You get my point. It's about connectivity. It's what keeps progress in motion in a time where economic recovery tops political agendas globally. Without connectivity, business stops. For those of you who have ever had your net connection crash when that big report needed to go out, you know what I mean. Loss of signal in front of a TV when a football match is on may not have much to do with Europe's recovery, but a crisis nonetheless to some. Lab testing that we concluded last year has been echoed in member states. It suggests that this sort of interruption is likely when someone gets an LTE mobile device 3 meters or closer to a TV, or broadband connection in the near future. We have entered into discussion with the Commission on this, and they are looking into technical aspects, which we support, but unfortunately are currently separating this from the policy debate. Removed from all the policy language whose meaning is greater here in Brussels than anywhere else, the interference from future LTE use in the 800 MHz band would simply cause frustration. Perhaps more frustrating is that we have the chance to avoid it, yet this issue was not explicitly on the agenda for today or tomorrow's Spectrum Summit. It is our sincere hope that today's talk of future progress does not remain in the realm of the theoretical. Of course, avoiding interference will take more than just a dialogue between the mobile industry and the cable industry. The fact that the interference is with tuners and receivers found in common everyday consumer equipment means that a truly 360-degree solution is called for. It is too simple to consider this just a cable problem. Precautionary principles, polluter pay principles, we heard it today, or practical considerations, we are all in the driver's seat and have the opportunity and responsibility to steer around this future problem. And in any case, you think we're here to block progress, it is simply not the case. The fact is that cable sees LTE as an enormous opportunity. We want these new services to work, just as much as our competitors, no matter how bigger they may or may not be. We have companies in our membership who are gearing up to buy a new spectrum for LTE services. It will be in a higher band because, of course, we know not to interfere with existing services used by millions of Europeans. But if LTE services used in the 800 MHz band interfere, there will be many questions from consumers, likely millions. Frustrated consumers won't be interested in who owns 800 MHz spectrum or which device is to blame. What we need to know today, before spectrum auctions take place, is what Europe's response will be. We are in a position to have a plan A rather than a plan B after the market has paid for spectrum and consumers for the services that they expect to function. To conclude, the Commission and Member States themselves have recognized the problem of interference. What we need to know today is what Europe's response will be when it occurs in the European living room or place of business. Who will be responsible? What will be the European Parliament and Commission say? Thank you.